right away. Hey, everybody. It's your host, Felipe. You're listening to the Total Basis podcast. And with me, as always, is Sean Flannery. But before I get to him, we have another guest. As we continue our Build a Lineup series here in 2021, we will be discussing the following 6 teams: the Diamondbacks, the Rangers, the Texas Rangers, not the New York Rangers, the Texas Rangers, the Milwaukee Brewers, the Chicago White Sox, the Philadelphia Phillies, and the New York Yankees. And with me is a White Sox fan, a real White Sox fan, not this fake White Sox fan bullshit you got going here with me every week. But I got our guy, Ricky Velazquez, who's a Baseball Life group member. And for those who don't know, you can listen to us and watch us live every Sunday morning at the Baseball Life Facebook group. And like I mentioned, Ricky is a Baseball Life member, and he has did us the big honor and favor of joining us this weekend. Ricky, how you doing this morning?
Man, I'm doing great. Thanks for the privilege of being on the show. Really enjoy you guys' show, all the platforms that are on Baseball Life and throughout, all the life groups. And just honored to be part of this process this morning with you guys.
Oh man, well, I greatly appreciate it, man. I greatly appreciate you waking up early with us. I know it's Sunday; people would rather be sleeping or having brunch or whatever. But hey, baseball and brunch. Yeah, shush over there, Sean. So you're a White Sox fan, but you were telling us an interesting story. Actually, all week, kind of left my mind when I asked you again for the umpteenth time. But you weren't always a White Sox fan, is that correct, Ricky?
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, my love started with the New York Mets. I can't lie. I was born into what we call the World Series of 1969. The amazing Mets that came back and beat the Chicago Cubs in that division during that race, and ended up winning. Oh, I'm sorry, you had that Cubs hat on. Winning that championship. And so we moved to Chicago like in 79. And so I needed another team to root for because it was difficult at that time to try to follow a team all the way from the Midwest to the East Coast. And there was no way that I could root for the Cubs. So we ended up going to a White Sox game, and that was it. I started falling in love with the White Sox. And ever since then, even though I really enjoyed my World Series 86 win, I still follow the Mets. But my heart belongs to the White Sox. I can't lie.
Wow, I mean, that's pretty interesting. You get transplanted to another time zone, so to speak, or closer to the Great Lakes region. And yeah, I mean, people do forget that, like, how difficult it was back in the day to just follow your team if you're like in a different part of the country, as there was no satellite TV, there was no
MLB TV.
MLB Network or Sports Center or cable television. And, of course, the nightly news, the local news only cares about the local team. So it's a very interesting point there as like, how can you ditch the Mets? Because I'm pretty sure that's going to happen. How can you ditch the New York Mets, man?
Well, I'm going to tell you one more thing. The only thing that we had going for us at that time, there was a WGN network here in Chicago, as you know, Felipe, but there was the WOR network, which was from New York. And that was kind of like their super station.
Yeah.
Cable provided that WOR here for the first couple years in Chicago. So I was able to keep up with the Mets. I was able to watch Mets games. I was able to do that. And I think sometime around, I want to say around 81, 82, they stopped broadcasting Mets games. And so I really, kind of delved into 82 and then started watching the White Sox. And then in 84, when you got to the winning ugly team and you had that excitement of the White Sox doing what they were doing in 84, it just became easy to transition over for me since I didn't have a way of following the Mets any longer.
83 was their playoff appearance for the White Sox. So you kind of was timed perfectly for you. Unfortunately, they would lose to the Baltimore Orioles to the Cal Ripken, was it his rookie campaign, I believe.
Yeah.
And the rest is history. They went on to sign Tony La Russa. Wait, was Tony La Russa managing the 83 team?
Yes.
Yeah, and now 30 odd years later, he's back with the team, and
we're back full circle.
Full circle. It's the circle of life. So yeah, man, interesting stuff, man. I always like talking about baseball history, and that's a nice little look back at it. And like I said, history always tends to repeat itself in weird ways. So here we are with Tony La Russa back at the helm. Sean, I haven't asked you how you doing this morning.
Oh, I'm bright-eyed, bushy-tailed. Got to go back into work later today, so got to get this out of the way. Maybe take a little nap before going back in. But it is funny that he mentioned WOR. They were actually doing the Mets radio for the last like few years until like 2018, 2019. So
Jesus.
that does ring a bell even for a Mets fan, 30, 40 years later.
And he did mention WGN for a long time. WGN used to carry the White Sox games and mostly the Cubs games, and they're no longer doing any baseball anymore for the first time in their history, it seems like. So times are changing. So yeah, history repeats itself, but times are always changing. But let's get to it, man. We have 60 more players to pick here. I had the first pick overall this time around, followed by Ricky, who's picking second, and Sean, who will be picking dead last, but he'll get the snake around, so he'll get.
I get the turn. I get that 3-1 turn.
3-1 turn. All right. So as soon as Sean is allowing me to share my screen, I can share my screen. And,
way to call me out there, Felipe.
Yeah, that was my way of code for Sean. Let me have my share the screen here.
Okay, there you go.
All right, let me see. Oh, here we go. All right, so I had the first pick, and I decided that I wanted to start at outfield. So we're gonna start with the outfielders right here, and of course, Christian Yelich kicking things off in this draft. We will. That's who I'm picking right off the bat is Christian Yelich, who has been one of my favorite players since I read about him way back in 2012, 2013, and I had him in one of my keeper leagues well before he was prepared to be the Christian Yelich we all know and love. So a lot of growing pains, but yeah, Christian Yelich is one of my favorite players simply because of fantasy baseball and you get, I don't know, Sean, we talk about this a lot or not, but you do get attached to some of these players, even if they're not on your own team. You do get attached to some of these players if you've been following them and you've been keeping track of them in fantasy. I don't know if let's start with Ricky. Ricky, do you have a player that's not a White Sox or in this case a Mets player who you kind of have grown attached to just for the simple fact that you play fantasy baseball?
Oh, I mean, absolutely. You have a ton of them. If you're not just watching baseball anymore just for your team, I mean, Mookie Betts has been a guy that I've had for several years, and I just love having him on my team. He's just produces all the way around. So that's one of the guys that I follow heavy.
And Sean, do you have someone like that?
I've tried. It seems I have a new team and with a new player I watch every year. Like last in 2019, with MLB TV, I tried to watch a lot of the Angels so I could really appreciate Mike Trout. In 2020 last year, I really bounced around a lot of teams in the shortened seasons, just trying to soak up as much baseball as I could. One team that I did find myself watching more was the Southsiders. And I know it wasn't the best year for a lot of their guys. Yoan Moncada's been someone I've always been high on, and he had COVID and was a bit of a down year for him. But you could tell just how bright the future was, especially with how Louise Robert just, blew up on the scene. Even if he did fade down the stretch, but they were a fun team to watch.
Well, I mean, speaking of struggles, Christian Yelich also struggled last year, but again, hoping for the 2020 was just an anomaly argument and hoping for a big bounce back year because I still have him in that one keeper league I mentioned. So here's hoping that he returns to be an MVP caliber player. We go on to Eloy Jimenez, and of course, Ricky, being a White Sox fan, he picks Eloy Jimenez. Aside from being a homer pick, why did you go with the Eloy Jimenez pick here?
Believe it or not, you start looking at the teams. I had a toss-up between Bryce Harper and Eloy Jimenez. I know a lot of people are not big on Bryce Harper, but when you start looking at the numbers across the board, they're very comparable numbers. And the thing that I like about Eloy, he's just a little younger. He's on the rise. Okay, defensively, there's a big knock there. But when you look at the strides that he's taken offensively, he sprays the ball to all sides, of the field. He loves to go to right field a lot. And for a power hitter, I think that's impressive because when you start hitting the ball to the right, eventually, when you start seeing the ball the way you're supposed to see it, you're going to be able to hit some powerful home runs. Eloy Jimenez has stepped up his game in every aspect besides defense. We need to remove the nets from the field so he can stop jumping into the nets. But other than that, I mean, he's producing. And with the lineup that the White Sox have, I just believe he's going to be an RBI machine for years to come.
If the nets aren't there, who's going to catch him when he jumps into the stands like a humpback whale? Like,
I think somebody put a chart up this week in Baseball Life talking about, we don't really worry about that because the only thing that he's allowed to do is have that little corner in left field because Louise Robert is going to take care of the rest of it.
Yeah, that's one of the running gags here at the Total Bases podcast is that Luis Robert is so important because he plays all three outfield positions for the White Sox. This year, Adam Eaton is on that team, so he'll get a little help. So maybe just the left side of the outfield. We move on to Bryce Harper, who Ricky alluded to. Ricky did pick him, and then he changed his mind because Sean took about 12 hours to make his first pick. But Bryce Harper, Bryce Harper, former megastar, superstar player, has now become America's most hated baseball player because he had that gargantuan contract. He's also a kind of a bad boy kind of person, and but there's this illusion or this connotation that he really doesn't produce and he's overrated. Sean, you obviously don't see it the same way.
It's a load of shit. I'm sorry, Mom, if you're listening, but it's an absolute load of crock. I mean, he signs this giant contract, whether he was worth it or not, probably not. He probably was worth a little bit less, but they paid for upside because this is a guy who had a 155 WRC plus in 2017. He had a 197 in his Ruthie in 2015. And then since joining the Phillies, everyone sees a batting average in the 260s and they want to just say, oh, he's overrated. He was a 4.5 win player in 2019. He almost went 2020. He had 35 home runs, 114 RBIs. The RBIs were a career high in his first year with the new team. That's kind of shocking. And then in 2020, he had a 20% walk percentage and a strikeout rate under 18%. So he walked more than he struck out. Pitchers are fearing him, and they should because his batted ball metrics are just outstanding, as they've always been. You know, he hits the ball hard. And I think one thing that gets missed this year is his expected batting average, which takes into account, you know, your launch angle and your exit velocity. You know, if you're hitting it hard but directly into the ground, your expected batting average isn't going to be that high. He was in the 96th percentile in that. He had a 307 expected batting average, which was the highest in the StatCast era by over 12 points. So I think he's just now coming into his own. It's crazy to think that Bryce Harper's only 28, but he's just now figuring out that ballpark. He's there for, you know, the next 11 years. So I think we've still yet to see the premium Bryce Harper that's getting paid a lot of money for it.
And doesn't it feel like he's like 34 years old? He's been in the league so long.
Yeah, 19 years old.
Although I do like Eloy Jimenez, and I get why Ricky picked him. In a fantasy draft, I definitely lean towards Bryce Harper a little bit more just because he's going to be chipping in some steals. He had 15 steals in 2019. His career high was 21 back with Washington, and he had 8 in the shortened season. So Joe Girardi's going to let that team run, it looks like. If I was a Phillies fan, I'd be like freaking out that my $300-something million contract player's running for no reason. But hey, it works for fantasy.
And I was going to mention, in terms of most feared hitters, as Sean mentioned, since 2011, Bryce Harper, I guess you could say he leads the league in seeing the least amount of pitches in the strike zone, according to Fangraphs, among all the active players.
Thanks
Bryce
a lot,
Harper,
Joe Madden.
Yeah. Bryce Harper sees 38.1% of pitches inside the strike zone, which is a league low. No one sees less than he does. Other guys on this list is guys like Javier Baez, Joey Gallo, Giancarlo Stanton. So yeah, he's in good company, and like you said, he is very feared. But we move on to Aaron Judge, and I wanted to just mention that Henry called you out saying that you can't objectively talk about the Yankees, but here you are picking in a Yankees player.
And if you look at the team, Henry, shout out to Henry, host of the Dong City podcast. I like the Yankees. I like a lot of their hitters. Are some of them overrated? Yes. Is this guy one that I picked overrated? No. He just can never stay on the field. Aaron Judge is an absolute behemoth on and off the field. In 2020, the walk rate came down, which is something that worries me. Exit velos were down a little bit too. He only played in 28 of the 60 games. He was my number one overall pick in that 30-team dynasty, and it's really kind of biting me in the ass but when he is clicking on all cylinders, he is a easy 30 home run threat. I mean, in his last 2 years, he's played 112, 102 games, and he's been at 27 home runs both times. So if you take that out over 150, he's 45, 50 easy. He just needs to stay healthy, and that'll always be the question going forward with him. So he chips in everywhere. Great OBP, solid batting average. Is probably a league leading contender for home runs every time. You can't go wrong with him. And for me to get both Harper and Judge, I thought was awesome.
Yeah, man, you pretty much got the two premier outfielders of the last 5 years or so. Both deemed overrated, but when they're, especially Aaron Judge, when he's healthy, he's an MVP candidate. I mean, facts are facts. Moving on to Louise Robert, we just kind of alluded to a little bit earlier in the podcast, but Ricky went White Sox back-to-back picks here. Are you, Ricky, concerned about Louise Robert's tumultuous fall in the second half last year?
A little concerned because of the plate discipline. He needs to really work on that this year. I believe his strikeout rate last year was like about 32%. Chasing that slider, chasing that breaking ball away. I think sometimes he pressed a little bit. When he got down to that final round with Kyle Lewis for the Rookie of the Year, I thought that Louise Robert had it in the bag. He started pressing a little bit. He started trying to do too much, and you could just see that he wasn't disciplined at the plate, and that got in his mind. I don't know if he was dealing with some injuries. I know he had crashed against the wall, and ever since he had made that play that crashed against the wall, it was a couple of weeks there at the end where he seemed to struggle a lot at the plate. He did seem to come back in the playoffs against Oakland, but let's hope that he could put that behind him. I'd hope somebody's working with him this year to really hone in on his discipline on the plate, because if that kid can figure it out and understand that he could work some counts in his favor, he's going to be dangerous.
Oh, man. Luis Robert led the league last year, according to Fangraphs, led the league in swing percentage and swinging strike percentage. So a little bit raw.
You miss 100% of the shots you don't take, Michael Scott.
That's right, Sean.
Well, unfortunately, that's going to be a theme with the White Sox every year, because Tim Anderson also leads the league. He's among the league leaders in often outside the zone swinging strike, right there with Luis Robert. So Eloy Jimenez is number 6 on that list. So it's a lineup full of aggressive guys. The difference is those other two I just mentioned know how to make contact, and Luis Robert is just raw like Monday nights. So
what's funny with Luis Robert is he was actually better against breaking balls than he was any other type of pitch class between fastballs, breaking balls, and off speed. He batted .259 against breaking pitches and had a .565 slugging, with 10 of his 11 home runs coming against breaking balls. Obviously, a lot of those were the ones that didn't break out of the zone.
Rolling breaking balls.
Yeah. And I'm telling you, he can put a charge, and if you hang it, he crushed some balls. I think it's kind of scary, but you can see the upside. If you look at Baseball Savant's player similarity tool, the names that come up with Luis Robert, Aaron Judge, Eugenio Suarez, and Keston Hiura, that's good. Those are 3 good names. But the other 2 names on the list, Jacoby Jones and Harrison Bader. And I think that just explains how high the ceiling is, but at the same time, how low that floor can be unless the hit tool really progresses. And he's a guy in the minors who got by, much like Ahmed Rosario of the Mets. He got by on just having, these lightning quick hands. He had more power than Rosario ever had, but he consistently posted, like 300 batting averages. He was a .312 hitter in the minors. And then he gets to the majors, and pitchers figure you out. I mean, those pitchers came up through the minor leagues too. They know what they're doing. And if he just needs to make that adjustment, but it's much easier said than done.
Yeah.
All right. Well, moving on to Cattell Marte. I was not very excited to make this pick, but it seemed like this is a running theme for these lineups, is that it gets thin very quickly. And with the White Sox fan behind me, I'm not going to get all the White Sox players that I want. They're a very talented team, but yeah, I'm kind of behind the 8 ball here if I'm picking this on the other opposite end of the this little mini draft we got going here. So Cattell Marte, right? I'm hoping that the power comes back, I guess, at this point. He still hits in Arizona. Doesn't strike out a lot, doesn't take a lot of walks either, but, we're banking that the 2019 can come back. I don't think it will, but compared to everybody else on this list, he seemed to be the best player available at this spot. Now, get to a guy like Joey Gallo, however, and that's one of my favorite players in baseball right now. I don't know if you guys saw that I do. Our guy Steven from Texas, I hope he's doing well. I haven't heard from him. I hope he's doing well. I know Texas is going through some things right now. But he didn't do it. But for one of the Secret Santa years, a member gave me a Joey Gallo jersey, and then Steven gave a Joey Gallo onesie for my daughter, so we could both be matching. That's how much I like Joey Gallo, right? Like I'm willing to wear his jersey. So Joey Gallo is just an absolute behemoth. I mean, it's power and more power, max power if he could. I know what was it, Sean, rekindle my memory here, but I think he was hurt for the majority of the year. But 2019, he pretty much was an instrumental player for my points league. So I'm hoping the same could be duplicated this season. As the concern with him is this high strikeouts, but I'm telling you, I had him in my points league, and as long as he's able to hit those bombs, it doesn't matter how many times he strikes out because he always makes up for it.
Yeah, in 2019, in that first half before he got hurt, he had actually was hitting a career high 253. And then in 2020, that batting average came back down to 180. But he still hit for power. He had 10 home runs over 57 games. The only issue I worry about with Joey Gallo is he outright said that new ballpark plays small or plays big. And then you add into the fact that MLB is deadening the balls and you have dead balls in a big park that they haven't touched yet. And I'm sure if they have offensive issues, those fences will come in. That's what happens with every new stadium.
Yeah.
But unless he gets traded, which I thought would have happened already, he's somebody that, although I do like, I might have to avoid.
Oh, wow. Look at that. Well, I mean, on this list, the pickings were slim. I still love Joey Gallo, but I mean,
I actually really liked your Marte pick. I think he's the steal of drafts right now because after 2019, his ADP was like in the 20s and 30s. And now he had a slight down year. It wasn't even that terrible. The power went away, but the skills were still there. And now his ADP is in like the 80s. And he's a guy who gives you a little bit of power, good average, stolen bases. I don't know what there's multi-position eligibility. Like, I don't know what there's to not like. But I actually love the Marte pick.
Yeah, well, even before all that, he's still too high for me. I'll probably be avoiding him like I always avoid him. But at least I don't feel so bad for picking him as my second outfielder. But like I said, the pickings are slim because now Ricky has to pick a guy like Clint Frazier. It looks like he'll finally get to start. But a little bit of foreshadowing here, the fact that Sean goes on and picks up Aaron Hicks shows. And we made these picks before the Brett Gardner signing as well. So there might be a role that Brett Gardner still plays with his Yankees team. So, Ricky, with all that being said, how confident are you that Clint Frazier will be playing the majority of time in outfield for that team?
Well, Boone already announced that he's going to be the starting left fielder. That was prior to Gardner signing the other day, or as I like to refer to him, Caillou. I know a lot of people, that big bald-headed head comparison. He really doesn't like him. Henry loves him. Henry's happy that he got to sign back on. Hey, Gardner's been one of those guys that's just been magical for the Yankees. He seems to produce. He sometimes makes some boneheaded, but he's a guy that comes up with a big hit. He's always there. But Clint Frazier was given an opportunity. One of the things that as a young Yankee player that you can have in the Yankees is an opportunity because everyone's always getting hurt. Clint Frazier came up last year. He got sent down after 2 games. He got called back up and he delivered. I believe he had 8 home runs last year. Mm-hmm. He's only going to get better with playing time. And I look forward to seeing what Clint Frazier has to offer.
Moving on to Aaron Hicks, like I said, back-to-back Yankees picks here. And don't forget, I would be remiss if I didn't say this, but obviously all 6 of these teams must be represented in these lineups. So I always try to make sure I do that right away, right off the bat, so I don't have to worry about it later. But getting back to the Aaron Hicks picks, intriguing player, but now he's I think he's 31 now. He's
He
always
is like
hurt.
the oldest looking 31 I've ever seen in my life.
Well,
I would have thought he was
remember,
at least 34 or 35. When I
remember
saw he
that's
was 31, I was like, what?
that's the way baseball is now. 27, 28, that's the new 30, 31 now. So if you're 31, you're basically 35 years old at this point of your career. That's just the way it works nowadays. But Aaron Hicks, what can you tell us about Aaron Hicks that we don't know about him already?
I mean, 27, 2018 were obviously the peak years, posted weighted runs created plus 128 and 129 in those 2 seasons, combined for almost 8.5 WAR. But health has been something that's gotten in the way. 2019, he only played 59 games. 2020, he played 54 games. Of course, he is someone who probably benefited from a shortened season in which he was able to, not have to plan out, off days. And I'm sure Girardi, kind of helped out there, or not Girardi, Boone, talking about Girardi earlier. Hicks in an average of a normal category 5x5 categories league is someone that drops a lot. And that's because the last 2 years, his batting average has been right in the high 220s, low 230s. He walks a lot, so he is somewhat better in OBP leagues. He had a 379 on base in 2020. He chips in some home runs, some stolen bases. You know me, I like my walk rate guys, so I went with Aaron Hicks here. The defense is no longer what it used to be, which is slightly worrying because if that defense starts to falter, I think the Yankees could look at Mike Tauchman getting more playing time. Mike Tauchman is by far probably the best all-around 3-positioned outfield defender. Obviously, Judge is a Gold Glover in right field, but if Hicks has any injury issues, Tauchman could be a guy to target. But I like Hicks and his established plate discipline.
And then look at this, guys. We were talking about the White Sox mostly because a couple of White Sox fans are in here. Don't let the hat fool you. But look at this: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Yankees are picked in a row here. That's I don't know what that says about the Yankees team as a whole or what that says about the other teams. But yeah, it's going to be all Yankees talk all the time for the next couple of segments here. So let's move on to DJ LeMahieu, who was one of the big, we talked about it, Sean. He was one of the big free agents that was available this year. He re-signs with the team, and we're expecting big things again from him. Is that true still, or did you have any new revelations on him?
I want to address something. Leon is saying that the disrespect level for Stanton is amazing. But I want to say that Stanton this year doesn't even qualify for outfield after last season.
Yeah, he's only DH only this year.
Yeah, so he's DH only, so I couldn't pick him over Aaron Hicks. Trust me, if I could, I would have. And then if it's a conversation between Giancarlo Stanton and DJ LeMahieu, I'm going to pick the guy that doesn't have issues staying healthy and is, a 350 hitter the last 2 years. So, yeah, I went with DJ LeMahieu. There's not much to say other than not Coors Field. Yankee Stadium was built for him. I mean, a guy that when in Colorado faced 4-man outfields that were completely shifted to the right side. That just screamed to go to Yankee Stadium. And it doesn't shock me that he stayed there. I think he had zero mind thinkings of leaving. So he's going to be a significant fantasy asset, even though he is already 32. And that ballpark and that lineup, and he is starting to learn how to pull the ball some more for more power, but he gets so many home runs just hitting it to that short porch in right field. He's a stud, absolute stud.
Your number one second baseman in fantasy, Sean, or no?
Yeah, he's probably right there at 1. There's a couple of close seconds, but yeah, he's 1. All
right. Moving on, we go to a former second base eligible player in Gleyber Torres. He's now only eligible at shortstop, but there were rumors that he might switch to second base depending on who they would pick up, but I guess that's off the table now. Gleyber Torres is always an interesting player because he's so young, he's so raw, he has high pedigree. And then last year, he kind of fell off the earth. I know he was hurt. Ricky, you obviously see a big bounce back this year for Gleyber Torres. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when I look at, if you look at my team, you're going to notice one thing. I do some keeper leagues. So I kind of tend to lean toward those young players that are going to be around for a while.
You're on the right podcast.
And Gleyber Torres fits that criteria. I mean, he definitely had an off year last year, but I'm hoping back, for him to be back in his normal numbers, somewhere between, 25, 30 home runs, maybe somewhere between 75 and 85 RBIs. I think that's some good production where he's going to sit in. Shortstop, second base, they could use him, up the middle, depending on how they're going to play DJ Lamechu there. He'll probably play some second base, maybe some, move around some first base here and there. So, Gleyber is one of those guys. You would hope that he would come back to the potential that he's showing. And like you mentioned earlier, maybe this is just an anomaly of him having one of those off years, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I'm high on Gleyber. I know Sean always alludes to the fact that he's so much of a line drive hitter to be that consistent with the home run numbers. Is if that's the
I just don't. He hits a lot of line drives, but he doesn't necessarily drive the ball. His exit velo numbers are just kind of middling, always been around league average or worse. But in that ballpark, if he can consistently lift it enough and face the Orioles 20 times a year, he should be fine, right?
I mean, he's in the right division.
I'm always the low person on Gleyber Torres, and I always get ripped for it. But it is what it is.
He's in the right division for sure. I mean, that's why it comes with a price tag. I mean, last year he was a borderline first round pick. Sean, as you know, we talk about it. I almost picked him in first round overall in the Baseball Life Fantrax League, and then I changed my mind at the last minute, got Juan Soto instead, and I was able to get Gleyber Torres anyway, so it worked out for me. But I think he's been going in the third or fourth round, which, again, the reason he doesn't drop too low.
I still think you're paying a premium for a question mark. Like,
well, that's
38 home runs just isn't happening again.
Well, that's the point.
It isn't.
It comes with the price tag, though. You just mentioned that if he hits against the Orioles all the time, I mean, he will. He's in that division where all the ballparks are nice and hitter friendly. So that's part of the price package you get with him. I just feel like shortstop is so deep now compared to prior years
for sure, that I can totally justify myself in not paying the premium for him in getting somebody else and getting still a great shortstop.
And we move on to the last Yankee of this Yankee bunch, Giancarlo Stanton, who you just mentioned, Leon mentioned. Leon listening in, he's a broadcaster. He does the Step Back Basketball podcast over at the Spallless Life group. So check him out Wednesday nights along with Jacob Moses. Giancarlo Stanton, again, just like Joey Gallo, big time power. I guess there's a certain theme going here with me as Joey Gallo and Giancarlo Stanton going back to back. I like his power. I don't like the fact that he's always hurt. It stinks. The strikeouts are too high as well. But just like Joey Gallo, as long as he produces, it doesn't really matter because even in points leagues, he can be very productive. So, I am. I think this year I will, even though he's only DH eligible, I will aggressively pursue Giancarlo Stanton in this one. Sean, do you have anything else to say about Giancarlo Stanton before we move on?
I don't really, aside from I made a really dank meme about him, and I will share it with us later while I pull it up and find it. But you can take us on continually.
Alrighty. So moving on to what we got here. It's still my turn. I decided that let's go to catcher now, and I ended up getting what I still think is the best catcher in all of baseball, and JT Realmuto. I know that he just concerns about him aging and injury prone, and he's already hurt. He has a thumb injury, but still, when he's healthy and compared to all the other catchers, there's really nothing out there. So you might as well just snatch him if you don't want to deal with the the James McCanns of the world, so to speak, or the Gary Sanchez's of the world. Those catcher number 12 and 13. Might as well go after him. I like him. I still believe in him for at least in the short term, the next couple of years. And then we'll see what happens. Yasmani Grandal, Ricky, another homer pick, so to speak, right? But I'm a big fan of Yasmani Grandal, even if he wasn't with the White Sox. But what do you like about Grandal at the number 2 spot here?
Listen, what's not there to like, right? You said it. He's probably number 2, arguably probably the number 1 catcher in baseball. It seems like I have a lot of homer picks, but you guys have to understand the White Sox have 9 out of the top 100 players in MLB. So it's just going to be easy pickings for me to pick the White Sox all the time. I mean, when you look at you picking JT Realmuto, who's left? I mean, Grandal is the best, next option here. And so you take a guy who's a switch hitting catcher, has powers from both sides. Defensively, he's a solid catcher. So I'm looking forward to seeing what he brings to the table this year again. They had a decent year last year, and I like to see the whole package. I know coming out of staying in the Midwest here, coming from the Brewers over to the White Sox, got to see a little bit of him over there. Kind of love the signing and love to see where we go moving forward here.
Oh man, I was ecstatic when they signed him last year. So I know, again, just like JT Realmuto. Oh, why are you signing these catchers long term? And Sean, we always talk about this. Have you seen who the top 5, top 6, top 8 catchers are? They're all in their 30s. It doesn't matter.
Not Fresh Prince, aka catcher number 1 of 2021.
Even he's gonna have to do some splitting time with Austin Barnes and
they're catchers. They all split time. Unless your name is JT Realmuto, they're going to split time.
Yeah.
Yasmani Grandal's maybe will split less time because he'll DH more. But come on, like what?
No, it's all relative, Sean. Come on, the fact that Austin Barnes is just always lurking for those personal catching days. I mean that just I like Will Smith, but if you were to guarantee that he would play like 4 out of 6 out of the 7 games or whatever, or maybe 5.
He plays at least 100 games this year.
Okay, what about the rest of the 60 games?
They have I don't know, Austin Barnes, Keibert Ruiz.
They had Keibert Ruiz too, so they got.
Except Will Smith's better than Keibert Ruiz. That was how I knew I was a special person when in that 30-team dynasty I had both Keibert Ruiz, who was much highly touted compared to Will Smith, and I said I'm gonna pass on Ruiz and I'm gonna draft Will Smith 2 rounds later. And that worked out gloriously because since debuting, he's been one of the best hitting catchers in baseball.
So there's that. See, there's a 3-headed monster at catcher and once again, another mid-20s catchers getting shafted because they don't believe in him just yet. But, we talked about the Travis d'Arnaud's of the world, Yasmani Grandal's and the JT Realmuto's. And then we get to Omar Narvaez, who is a personal favorite of Sean. He's always talking about him. Omar Narvaez, anything new about him today?
I mean, he was really, really bad in 2020. He batted under 200. The power that we thought was just starting to blossom just went away. But he's one of those few catchers that the Brewers have nobody behind him. So he should be playing a lot. And one thing that will keep him in the lineup that isn't fantasy relevant is he went from being one of the worst framers in baseball to one of the best. Maybe that's just a short sample thing, but apparently he did put in some work before the 2020 season. So if that keeps his bat in the lineup and he plays, batting around Christian Yelich in front of, behind, whatever, this is a guy who over the last 3 years, his batting average hasn't dipped below 275 and is topped out at 278. He's just a consistent average hitter that I think really gets slept on in fantasy, and he really shouldn't because there are not many catchers out there that can hit 275 in a season, and he's shown the ability to do it 3 times.
All right. On my other screen, I'm just doing something really quick because this is bothering me about the catching position. All right, so here is, according to Fantasy Pros from the last time I looked at their catching rankings, which was a while back ago, but that's what I'm going with right now. All right, here are the top catchers in their ages, right? Salvador Perez, age 31. Wilson Contreras, age 29. JT Realmuto, age 30. And then there's Will Smith, who we just mentioned. He's getting shafted by the Dodgers, and he's in his mid-20s. So Yasmani Grandal, age 32. Travis d'Arnaud, age 32. Gary Sanchez, 28, and his stock is dipping.
d'Arnaud and Grandal are the same age. That's so weird.
Yeah, they're entering their age 32 season, according to my spreadsheet that I'm looking here on the opposite screen. Christian Vasquez is 30 years old, and he's a top 10 catcher for some ungodly reason. I don't get that.
Him and Roberto Perez are like totally sold on their 2019 seasons.
Sean Murphy, who's in his mid-20s, he's the number 9 catcher. And last I checked, there's I could have sworn when I saw the Oakland Athletics roster resource page that they were showing that he might be splitting time with the backup over there. And I can't remember. I have to look into it. But the fact that he's number 9 and not ranked higher, that just is another red flag for me. Austin Nola, 31 years old. He finally made it, Sean. After years of being a backup and not
hey,
knowing
look, I made it.
first base with the Mariners or getting traded by DePoto, he finally finds a home in the top 10 spot at the age of 31. Mitch Garber, number 11, at age 30. Your guy, James McCann, age 31. Yadier Molina, 38. He's number 14. Buster Posey, number 15, 34 years old. Older is better at the catching position. All right?
Absolutely.
It's just a fact, And then Omar Narvaez, number 20.
They just take a long time. They take longer than usual. And then they age like milk. So it's why I'll never understand the JT Realmuto contract. Like, yeah, you just retain the best catcher in baseball, but for how long?
Well, I would like the Mets a lot better if Realmuto was on that team.
Well, I wouldn't. And we've had this conversation
all
before.
All the time, yes.
Hey, catchers are like point guards, man. Let me give you a crossover thing here, but let me jump in on the ball is life thing for a second here. But the point guards, as the years go on, they just get a little more savvy. They understand, and I think that's what happens with catchers. The more they call the game, the better they get, and their rankings are going to go up. Their bodies deteriorate, but their rankings are going to go up.
So Felipe, I will give you your screen back, but this was the meme I posted on Twitter. Somebody who's like, I just was able to draft Stanton at 143, and he said, I was really excited, and then I realized I stuck with Stanton. But I will give you your screen back. I just wanted to share that. I thought that was funny.
Oh boy. Where were we? Luke Voigt. This is why I use highlighter right here. Luke Voigt. You went with Luke Voigt over Jose Abreu, who's ranked higher, had an MVP year. Why, Sean? Why?
Why over Jose Abreu? Because I'm never the highest person on Jose Abreu, and I think Luke Voigt has been the most underrated first baseman of the last 3 years. And I know it's hard to be underrated when you play for the Yankees, but over the last 3 seasons, his weighted runs created plus has been 144 over 220 or 905 plate appearances, 221 games. My graphs is being really weird, so it's all off-centered. But yeah, he's been elite offensively. The only thing that was weird in 2020 compared to 2019 was the walk rate came down, but his slugging percentage like skyrocketed. It was 671 in limited time in 2018, came down to 464 in 19, and then went back above 610 in 2020, but with a walk rate of about half of what it was in 2019. So he's still maybe figuring it out, like what exactly he's trying to do. I don't know, but we'll see.
And I do apologize. It wasn't Sean Murphy. He's solidly in the catching position.
Especially after they traded Jonah Heim.
I was thinking about Tom Murphy, who all of a sudden is no longer the starting catcher for the Seattle Mariners. So apologies for that one. Okay, so speaking of Jose Abreu, Ricky just snatches him up right away. No hesitation. The former MVP.
Come on. Say that again. One more time for the people in the back.
I'm getting a lot of hate from Leon here. I think Bushnell and Leon both said something like, "Damn, I'm sorry, guys."
If you say anything bad about the White Sox, Bushnell's going to go after you no matter what. So,
Matt's got my back. That's right. Matt's got my back. Let me tell you something. You want a model of consistency. Sure, he's not going to be the flashiest player, but former Rookie of the Year, current MVP, Jose Abreu. What's not to love about him? I know Henry is big on J-Ram, but you know what? 21 first place votes for MVP versus 8. It wasn't even close.
Yeah, it was a ripoff.
No, it wasn't close. Okay, a ripoff would be, something closer, maybe by 1 or 2 votes. He tripled him in votes for first place. He led every category except home runs by 1. He was just dominating. His slugging percentage at 617 last year, OBP at 370. Jose Abreu has just been a model of consistency. His defense has improved. He's not the best defender, but he's not the worst defender. And it seems like the one thing that I would like to see a little more improvement on Jose Abreu is that he does struggle sometimes, at the plate. All of a sudden, he just loses. I don't know if he's losing concentration, but sometimes he just looks really bad at the plate at times. But when you need him for a big hit, I'd rather have nobody on the White Sox right now at the plate than Jose Abreu to deliver with a big hit.
And that's part of the reason that he struggles. Just like I mentioned earlier on the podcast, that White Sox lineup is full of aggressive hitters. And Jose Abreu, although not as extremely as aggressive as Luis Robert, Eloy Jimenez, and Tim Anderson, he's still a top 25 outside the swing percentage guy, which, you know, he is what he is, right? At least he makes consistent contact, right? But when you're chasing, well, you're going to be hitting those weak grounders to second and to short, and you're an automatic out because you don't run as fast. So that's part of the hair pulling with Jose Abreu, but he put it together last year in a 2020 MVP campaign. Since I didn't get a chance to say it when Ricky requested that I say it, 2020 MVP for the American League, Jose Abreu. And what do we have here? Okay, here.
I just want to rest
Make
my
it bigger,
case
Sean.
here.
Make it bigger. I can't see it.
There you go. It should be blown up now. I'm not going to be able to zoom in any further. I don't think.
Oh, jeez.
But yeah. I mean, they're nearly identical. Voit laps him in OBP and slugging over the last 3 years. In 600 less plate appearances, he only has 16 less home runs than Jose Abreu. I do think Jose Abreu is really, really good. I'm going to stop sharing so you can have the screen back. Okay. But now you're paying a premium for a guy who did just win MVP. Guys who win awards always, you know, there's so much helium with them. That I did like Jose Abreu in past drafts because, like you said, he is an absolute model of consistency. He is kind of like the first base version of Kyle Seager that a lot of people slept on, but he was an absolute lock for 275, 20 home runs, and 100 RBIs, or 80-plus RBIs. But why pick Jose Abreu in the top 50 when I can get Luke Voit like right outside the top 100, I think.
That's a good point. I mean, last year Jose Abreu was going as the number as low as the number 12 first baseman in fantasy leagues. So, and of course, things change overnight, so to speak. And now he's the number 2, number 3 first baseman coming into this year.
Yeah. So Jose Abreu, his ADP right now is 36. Luke Voit is 57 with a high of 67. So
yeah, the value
you definitely get him at least 2-3 rounds later.
Oh, there's no doubt the value there is better with Voit. Yeah.
With Voit, yeah. But not to get into politics here, but I have to bring it up with the White Sox fan on board. And this is local politics, so not to get too political, but there was a time where the arguments were always about Anthony Rizzo versus Jose Abreu. And for a long time, it looked like Anthony Rizzo was the more well-rounded player over Jose Abreu. It's 2021. In Chicago first base politics, who is the best first baseman for the Cubs or White Sox? Is it Jose Abreu or Anthony Rizzo? All around. Ricky, let's hear you first.
You know, I was going to defer to Sean because I didn't want it to be a homer pick.
No, I'm asking you, man.
I like Anthony Rizzo.
Putting you on the spot.
I'm going to tell you, I like Anthony Rizzo. He's more flashy, but I think he comes with a package with him and Chris Bryant. Not only they love to have fun on the field, but off the field. He's definitely, you know, a more all-around guy, entertaining kind of guy. But right now, I mean, I think that Jose Abreu is hit his peak. He doesn't have a ceiling anymore. He's either got he's plateaued already. So he's on his way down. I don't think that he's going to have another repeat season unless he does something incredible. But you know, I'm not going to pick Rizzo over Abreu, but he's a hell of a player. I'll say that.
Before I get to you, Sean, I just want to say that he mentioned Chris Bryant and Anthony Rizzo probably have more fun than Jose Abreu. Hey, man, you think Jose Abreu doesn't have fun with all the other Cubans on that team? Come on, you know how to get down, man.
Wepa! Dale, Jose, dale.
Sean, I guess this is more of a real life question. All around best first baseman, Jose Abreu or Anthony Rizzo?
I think Abreu has a higher floor, but I think Rizzo has a slightly higher ceiling, just in case that he does get back to what he has done before. I think his more all-around game, you know, he's a Gold Glover at first. He runs the bases relatively well, you know, for a first baseman. And he's had a down year or two. I can't remember Rizzo's numbers off the top of my head in 2020, but that entire Cubs offense really seemed to have a down year. But it's close. I'd take Rizzo just by a smidge, just because of the defense and all around, ability.
All right. Well, That means I got stuck drafting Andrew Vaughn as the talent level. Once you go after the Yankee players and the White Sox players, the talent level just dips. Oh, did I not share my screen? My bad. The talent level just dips, and I'm like, well, I don't like any of these first basemen that are out there. Maybe Rhys Hoskins, but I have a really good feeling that I can wait on Rhys Hoskins. So I went with the high upside guy and Andrew Vaughn. Everybody keeps telling me how good Vaughn will be once he gets called up. But the problem is with the White Sox, there's no room for him at first base. There's no room for him at designated hitter because you're going to have to give Eloy Jimenez those at-bats. You're going to have to give Yasmani Grandal those at-bats. So, but still, I mean, Ricky, as you alluded to, you're a keeper guy. You're in the right podcast. Sean and I are also keeper guys. Sean even goes a step further, and he's a dynasty guy. And for a podcast like this and for an exercise like this, I think Andrew Vaughn is a perfect pickup here. Nick Madrigal at second base. I know I don't like him a lot, but compared to everybody else, and just to kind of stick it to Sean and Ricky, he's on my team now because I know how much you guys like him. Madrigal is a very intriguing player, diminutive little guy. I call him Slappy for good reason. But the upside is that he will one day become Jose Altuve. With trash cans or not the trash cans, it remains to be seen. My concern is the minor league numbers show that he did not show a lot of pop, but everybody keeps telling me that he does profile to have some power. I don't see it, but at the very worst, he could be a steady 320 stolen base guy. So that I for this exercise, I'm more than willing to just pick up on him, as opposed to the more higher upside, higher potential Keston Hiura, who I absolutely love and adore. But number one, those strikeouts are very they're very concerning. And number two, I don't see the same consistency out of him. How do you view that, Ricky?
Well, 34.6% strikeout rate is definitely alarming. But he's got some potential, and not only he has second base. I don't think he's going to play second base. I mean, Colton Wong is coming over to the Brewers this year, and he's going to be moving into that position. I think he'll be more a first baseman this year. So yeah, he's got to definitely, get down on those strikes, but he's a decent pickup, somebody that I like for the future. He's doing some things, and he's got some good upside to him.
Moving on to Sean, as time is flying by this morning, I can't believe that we're already almost an hour in, Sean, and we're still at the infield position. So let's quickly wrap things up here, so we can get to the pitchers. Nick Solak, down year last year. If I was going to target him, but I kind of hesitated, and then I realized that he had like I said, down year last year. Do you see a big bounce back? I'm assuming here, Sean?
I don't think he's a huge bounce back, but I think he's a guy that you can target from middle infield that could just inadvertently, if given the plate appearances, sneak into a 2020 season. And then this time next year, he has like an ADP that like Dylan Moore has now, which is outrageously high. So this is a time to get him, because over 91 games so far in his career between 2019 and 2020, he has 7 home runs and 9 stolen bases. He has a solid walk to strikeout numbers. He was always a professional hitter in the minors with Tampa Bay. I think he's a really good player. He plays all over the field. Texas needs to find him plate appearances, and if they do, he's going to be a fantasy threat just because of his ability for power and speed.
And then you got Tim Anderson immediately after that. I mean, that's a slam dunk at shortstop.
I didn't even want Tim Anderson.
There's nobody left.
Just like Gleyber Torres, I'm the low person on Tim Anderson, but I do think there's been a legitimate skill change. Back-to-back years of being in the 90th percentile or higher in expected batting average. Some people are going to just point to his BABIP and say, "Oh, it's a 400 BABIP. That's too high." I think whatever he's doing now is real. I mean, 296 and 19, 293 and 20. He doesn't walk. That's probably the biggest hit against him, but he's a batting title contender. The stolen bases, it'll be interesting to see how La Russa lets this team run, because that could really boost the fantasy value of basically all the White Sox hitters. Moncada has a lot of speed that's been hampered by, hamstring injuries and stuff, but he had a couple of 30 steal seasons in the minors. And if Moncada turns into a potential 30-30 guy, I mean, he's a first rounder next year. Tim Anderson can steal 20-25 bags, and his value goes up, but it'll be interesting to see.
And I just wanted to point out his plate approach there, Sean. You mentioned whatever he's doing is working. He's basically been doing the same thing he's been doing this whole time with low walks, relatively high strikeouts, a very low walk to strikeout ratio, which at one point kind of was matching a guy like Alcides Escobar. And to me, that was going to be his final output, was he was going to become Alcides Escobar. And he finally clicked. That bat speed along with that aggressive style, it works for him. So, even if he hits a 400 BABIP, as long as it works, that's all that matters, right?
Yeah, and in 2020, he actually posted his highest expected slugging, over 500. So he's starting to hit for a little bit more power. It'll be interesting to see how that grows.
On the opposite side of the spectrum, you have a more established guy in Didi Gregorius that went to Ricky. I'm pretty sure he was bummed that Sean did not follow his instincts and went with Tim Anderson no matter what. Do you feel good about getting Didi Gregorius here, Ricky?
Here's a veteran, another former Yankee player, so I'll chalk it up as another Yankee guy. I got to a point here in this draft that I had to start taking guys from other teams. So I'm kind of glad I didn't get Tim Anderson. Sure, you want the whole White Sox team, but you got to play by the rules. So Didi Gregorius, veteran guy who's just going to consistently give you numbers. And when we talk about the next player that I have, and Alec Baum, we're going to talk about a guy who Didi Gregorius seemed like he was on base every time Alec Baum got an RBI last year. And so him batting ahead of him, getting on base is going to be a good place for him to get some good RBI situations. So I know we're kind of short on time. I'll just wrap it up and keep going here.
That's fine. Luis Durias is my next pick. I've always liked him, but I want to see more of him. But as we keep mentioning, the pickings are slim. There's a big, giant drop-off in talent, and there's not a lot of good middle infielders, at least in my book, there isn't. So I went with a guy, an old favorite of mine, Luis Urias, but he needs to start stepping up because the Brewers
I want him to work so bad, but I just don't think it's going to happen.
I don't know what's holding him up, but yeah, I mean, the Brewers are loaded, and in terms of getting in middle infield depth, which is something I wish the White Sox would have done so they could at least hide Nick Madrigal a little bit. Same what the Brewers are doing with Luis Urias and possibly Orlando Arcia. But here we are, so we'll see how that goes. Yoan Moncada, you just mentioned that he could be a potential 30-30 one day, which is good for all White Sox fans and all Yoan Moncada prospect fantasy leaguers out there. Former high pedigree, highly touted prospect. Got slowed down by COVID last year. He admitted as much that he was not the same. So hoping that he can rebound from the side effects and the aftermath of COVID and start producing like the former highly touted prospect that he can be. Alec Baum, as Ricky mentioned, the next wave of third baseman coming up. What do you like most about Alec Baum there, Ricky?
I mean, what's not to like? This kid he's just a specimen. The guy's, he's a big kid, 6'4", 6'5". He sprays the ball to all field. He was the second rookie of the year only to Devon Williams, but he led the league in rookies for batting average at 338. His OPS was at 881. I mean, slugging 481. This kid just when he started to play, he was consistent model on what he was doing. Like I said earlier, I think Sean offered me a trade for Tim Anderson, the Kyle Baum for Baum. I mean here, and I was like, no. Let's not start with that. I got him fair and square. He's mine. He's definitely a guy I would get in my keeper league. Somebody that Philadelphia and third baseman, you can't go wrong. Mike Schmidt. Come on, there's legacy there.
Yeah, Scott Rowland, Dave Hollins.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know we're trying to speed through these infielders, but God dang it, I wanted Alec Baum so bad. I thought Felipe was going to pick him. Ricky was going to pick Moncada, and then I was still going to be stuck with my pick. But when Felipe didn't pick him, I got my hopes up. Alec Baum is a special player. He's one of the most advanced bats I think I've seen reach the majors in the last few years, which is really like I think him and Andrew Vaughn are pretty similar. I think Bohm has a little bit more defensive versatility in that he could actually play third base. While Andrew Vaughn kind of plays third base, but is more first base DH. Him batting in front of Bryce Harper for the next 6 years, I think you're about to see a very much how Anthony Rendon was to Bryce Harper. Alec Baum is going to be that new Anthony Rendon for Bryce Harper.
Yeah, maybe he can make Philadelphia a little bit more fun for Bryce Harper. That's cool.
Hey, does anybody have an ADP on Baum here?
It's right inside the top 100 or right outside the top 100. I'll pull it up. From 108.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Well, and just to clarify, I do have Yohan Moncada ranked higher than Alec Baum at the moment. So, I was going to go with my cheat sheets
In
here.
categories, yes. In points, I definitely lean toward Baum.
All right. Well, you're stuck with Eduardo Escobar, who I'm convinced that him and Eddie Rosario and I forgot who the other former Twins player was. They're all the same players. So
yeah, it's really funny that you mentioned Eddie Rosario, because I'm going to talk about that in a sec. But the people forget that in 2019, Eduardo Escobar hit 35 home runs and had 118 RBIs. Like, holy shnikes. But his ADP now, after a down 2020 season, which is a phrase we're getting all too familiar with, his ADP now is outside the 230 after 220. It's at 242. Meanwhile, Eddie Rosario, who we always say is the same player, has an ADP right outside the top 100 at 112. If you look at them side by side, they're basically the same player. Eduardo Escobar, 796 OPS, Eddie Rosario, 800 OPS. They both have an OBP under 320. They both bat 262 or higher. They're both going to have middle of the lineup abilities. Escobar has 62 home runs. Rosario has 69 home runs. Nice. Why is one you have to spend in right outside the top 100 and the other one's essentially free? I don't get that. I'd pick Escobar over Rosario every day.
And then Gene Segura, which is, I was getting this close to getting him as my shortstop, but I just went with the upside pick. But yeah, Gene Segura is a pretty boring pick. Go ahead and
the steals are, I think, gone. Because I just now realized, but he put up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 straight years of 20 stolen bases or more. Only 10 in 2019 and 2 in the shortened season. And he is age 30, so this is when we do start to see guys stop running. He posted his first real negative BSR from Fangraphs, minus 1.1 in 2020. He did walk a little bit more, which was very un-Gene Segura-like, but he has some value as long as he's at the top of that Philly lineup.
I have to ask you, Sean, does it matter? Because I know the big hit on him was that Gabe Kapler did not like running. George Girardi, I don't know what his I forgot what his MO was in terms of letting the runners run, but will he allow some of these guys to run a little bit more, or is the fact that Bryce Harper in the lineup or guys like him in the lineup a little bit too dangerous for them to be aggressive on the base pads?
I mean, in 2020, he was 2 stolen bases, 2 caught stealing. In 2019, when Kapler was the manager, 10 stolen bases, 2 caught stealing. His percentages have never been great. He's always just kind of accumulated them. And he's played for a lot of losing teams, so that's how they manufacture runs.
Yeah.
If Philadelphia is really trying to contend, they might stop running. So we'll see.
All right.
And if they stop running, then Gene Segura loses about 95% of his value.
Colton Wong, we go to Ricky's team now. Colton Wong signed seemingly at the 11th hour with the Brewers, and that signing just completely shifted their entire infield. But Colton Wong has had a history of struggling to stay in the lineup. I know he's a Gold Glove winner, so that means that he's been able to successfully play every day without any hitch or any struggles. But we know better. We know how him being left-handed has affected him in a negative way. There again, Sean, one of the running themes here on the show. But how do you see Colton Wong playing out for the Brewers in 2021 there, Ricky?
Listen, I mean, you said it. He's a Gold Glove. It's not going to add a lot of value to fantasy. We were stretched here at middle infield position. Seemed like all the picks were taken, and you had to go with a name. I like the intangibles that he brings in the real season as far as fantasy player that somebody probably wouldn't touch, but just for sake of having somebody that needed to get picked up, I went with Colton Wong.
Yeah, I mean, when in doubt, just pick Colton Wong like late in the drafts. It seems like that's always my rule.
He does have some fantasy value, especially in an OBP league. Over the last 4 years since 2017, he's got a 356 OBP. That's nothing to really snuff at. 43 stolen bases over the last 4 years with a career high 24 in 2019. He had 5 in the shortened season. So that comes out to right around 17 stolen bases in a full 162. And while his defense itself doesn't translate to fantasy, it does keep him in the lineup, which does translate to fantasy. So I think he's a solid little pick, especially if he bats like leadoff. I don't think that's something a lot of people have talked about. Lorenzo Cain, if he comes back, should still be in that 1 or 2 hole. But if he's batting in front of Christian Yelich with a 360 OBP, then you're talking about a candidate to lead the league in runs possibly.
Yeah, good point there. Scott Kingery. I think I told you guys I was not very excited for this pick. The most that he could be is a 10-10 guy, 10 home runs, 10 stolen bases. But yeah, this was just like, all right, just whatever. I just want to move on because there's really nobody left at middle infield. This is easily one of the worst collections of middle infielders that we have witnessed so far in this exercise. So I'm glad that this is over and done with. I'm never going to talk about Scott Kingery ever again if I can help it. Rhys Hoskins, however, is a personal old favorite of mine. I was able to get both Andrew Vaughn and Rhys Hoskins, which is always a nice little goal to have, is to have a good veteran at one position and follow him up with a nice young hotshot prospect. That way you can have a little bit of insurance. But Hoskins, not a very exciting pick, but he's a pretty solid player and an established first baseman. So you can't do worse, as the pickings are also getting slim here at the corner infield position as well. Christian Walker goes to Ricky. Boy, that's a tough sell for me, but sell me on Christian Walker.
Well, I can tell you on this. I mean, prior to 2019, obviously, he was young, didn't do much. In 2019, he has a breakout year. He hits 29 home runs, 86 RBIs. Last year in the shortened season, he had 7 home runs with 34 RBIs. And so when you start looking at his projections, they're talking about anywhere between, 25, 28 home runs and maybe 80 to 90 RBIs. At this stage in the draft, I like a kid like that, and again, I had to pick somebody else. I didn't have an Arizona guy, so I had to pick somebody.
You should have picked Matt Bushnell. He's an Arizona guy.
Yeah, there you go.
Moving on, Nate Lowe. One of my, I was kind of hesitant to get him because I just don't know, but I do like him. Sean, you rolled the dice with him. How high is the ceiling, do you think?
I think the ceiling is abnormal. Is just outrageously high.
Really?
He is a guy who prospect, evaluators have just, especially the ones on Twitter. They're like free Nate Lowe, with the Rays, it was always just going to be like a short side of a platoon. Even though if you go and you look at his minor league splits, he hit lefties very well. He never struggled against them. He did have some issues against lefties this year in 2020. But in 2019, he actually had a higher OPS. He had an OPS over 1,000 in only 28 plate appearances versus lefties. So I don't think it's like he's really a platoon risk. I know you think he's a lefty and lefty is bad. But in the minor leagues, for his career, he was a 300 hitter on the dot, 300 average, 400 on base on the dot, 483 slugging. And that was without him really tapping into his power. His last 3 years, or last 3 stops at Double-A with the Biscuits in 18, and then Triple-A 19 or 18 and 19 with Durham. He posted sluggings of 606, 460, and 508. So I think he's still tapping into that raw power that he does have. I believe Fangraphs has it ranked as a 65 raw power with a potential 55 grade hit tool. I think he's an elite hitter. I don't want to put the ceiling at like David Ortiz, but I see that skill. Like that's this kind of the same. They hit both sides. A good with plate discipline. I really do like Nate Lowe. It is sad to see him not be able to play on the same team as his brother Josh Lowe, but that would have been fun to watch if they could have had it happen.
And the fact that he goes to Texas, he's going to get more playing time. So I think that's a not decent.
The acquisition of Chris Davis might muddy the waters a little bit, but I still like Nate Lowe.
And then from there, we move to the pitchers finally. As you guys can see, different format this week: starting pitcher, relief pitcher, starting pitcher, relief pitcher. So we're going to go back and forth between those two entities. And Sean gets us rolling with Garrett Cole. Do we really need to talk about Garrett Cole?
I mean, he's Garrett Cole. He's really, really good.
Moving on to Lucas Giolito. Do we need to talk about Lucas Giolito? Anything there? Or Ricky, you want to mention about Lucas?
The only thing he needs to improve on to me is his walk rate. I mean, it's 3.48 per 9 innings. If he can get his walk rate down, he's going to step up to that next tier level, that superstardom level we need him to be at.
And Sean, did you have anything to add about Lucas Giolito before we
I still think there's room for him to grow with Grandal behind the plate. Although, if I remember correctly, James McCann was his personal catcher. So
Correct.
There might be, a learning curve. It might be better. It might be worse. We'll see. But it'll be interesting to see how Grandal, who's, been a very, very good pitch framer over his career, does with Giolito.
Yeah. Let's see. I'm trying to think here. Oh, Zach Collins is still the backup. Okay. Well, Aaron Nola, decent pitcher, not the greatest pitcher, but just the, solid starting pitcher. Best of the bunch there. There was not a lot of elite starting pitchers like there was before in previous weeks, but I'm happy with Aaron Nola. But what I'm really happy about is getting Josh Hader, who could arguably be the best relief pitcher in fantasy, whether you're talking about saves or you're in a holds league. Oh, here we go. Josh Hader is younger than Liam Hendricks. I'm going to say that before we move on to Ricky's pick. But yeah, my only concern is how much does he have left in that arm, because he's been utilized very heavily with the Milwaukee Brewers, it seems like, as he's just been a godsend. But hey, Brewers are they have a very good bullpen, so maybe it's not that much of a concern to be in. We move on to Liam Hendricks, who the White Sox just picked up. They personally saw him in that playoff game against the Oakland Athletics, and where he was single-handedly trying to put that team on his back in Oakland. How excited are you to finally have an elite closer on the South Side there, Ricky?
Listen, Alex Colomé did do a bad job. First of all, I want to say that, because a lot of people are bashing Alex Colomé. He had a pretty decent year for the White Sox, 2 years, but Liam Hendricks is an upgrade. And if you can't beat him, it's good that he joined us. So I'm all right with that.
Quickly moving on to Devon Williams, who was a personal favorite of ours from season 1 there, Sean. How happy are you? Since we talked about him ad nauseum, just give me a little bit quick tidbit about him before we move on to Zach Gallen.
He's going to be the best reliever in baseball in 2020 or in 2021, because I'm assuming that before the trade deadline, at least maybe a month, Josh Hader will be traded to the Los Angeles Dodgers for a package around Gavin Lux, Edwin Rios, maybe one of those starting pitchers like Josiah Gray. I mean, the Dodgers just have an embarrassment of riches. They do have a little bit of a weak bullpen. I think Hader is a great target for them, and they can afford it. The Brewers can, with guys like Devon Williams to just fill in. He was, a potentially Cy Young candidate. That he was that good in his rookie year.
And then Zach Gallen.
He's Ricky thought I was going to pick Aaron Nola, but I was going Zach Gallen all the way. He had a little bit of a step back year. Actually, his ERA went down. Nice. I mean, actually, now that don't listen to me. He was basically the same. I think the strikeouts did go down a little bit. Yeah, just slight, like 0.5%. He's the ace out there that nobody's going to talk about because it's Arizona, but he's a great pitcher, and he's got the full repertoire with the outstanding changeup. So I'm automatically in.
Well, I was hoping to get Brandon Woodruff, but Ricky beat me to the punch, as I guess the secret's out on Brandon Woodruff, that he's a pretty decent or better than decent pitcher. What do you like about Brandon Woodruff here, Ricky?
He keeps the ball down. He's got a 49% ground ball rate. He's a guy who's got, I think, just about 11 Ks per 9 innings. He's a good pitcher, man. He's well-rounded.
Yeah, I like him a lot too, but I also like Corbin Burns, so it was kind of like consolation.
They're 1A and 1B.
Pretty much, yeah. I remember last year, Cubs fans were making fun of him because, at the beginning of 2020, he was very wild. Stuff is magnificent, but just very wild out there and on the mound. And eventually he put things together and showed why he has the upside and why people in baseball circles, and especially in Milwaukee, are excited about Corbin Burns' future up there. And then if that wasn't enough, if it wasn't enough to get Josh Hader, who I think is the number 1 relief pitcher coming into this season, I end up getting the number one relief pitcher in fantasy for the last 3 or 4 seasons, and Aroldis Chapman. So it just keeps getting better. You guys just keep giving me all the left-handed power pitchers, so I appreciate that. That's great. But then Ricky comes back. Oh, go.
Did I really have a chance to pick Aroldis Chapman and I didn't?
No, you picked Devon Williams.
Oh my God! Wow.
Yeah.
I told you this was my least favorite team. I loved my teams the last 2 weeks. This was my least favorite one. That was a goof on my part. Oh, I'm dumb. I'm big dumb.
And then Jonathan Hernandez going to Ricky. Say something about Jonathan Hernandez there, Rick.
I can tell you one thing. He had more wins coming out of the bullpen than some of the starting pitchers in 2020. I think he went like 5-1.
The vulture.
He potentially could be the closer over there, I believe. But who did
they had Rafael Montero, but he was traded to the Mariners. So Jonathan Hernandez and Jose Leclerc and my next reliever, well, not my next reliever, but my second to next reliever, all should kind of battle for the closer role. But Jonathan Hernandez has proved the most so far. Leclerc definitely has closer upside, but he's just been all over the place. So
all right. And then, I can't believe Sean went with Hector Neris, who just got awful last year, very inconsistent. I was very high on him last year, and I'm done with him. I don't believe in him anymore. But why should we believe in Hector Neris coming into this season, Sean?
Because while he did have an ERA over 4.5, he had, what was the total number of saves? He had 5 saves. Not bad. He had 28 the year before.
But at what cost, Sean? At what cost?
His expected ERA was underneath 4, if that makes you feel better.
No, it doesn't.
He still has the splitter. And as we know with split finger pitchers, sometimes they lose it, sometimes they get it back, and then they lose it again. In a short season, that doesn't bode well for a guy if you don't have it.
Right.
This was actually the worst year for a splitter in terms of results against. It was still a great pitch, but it's usually one of those pitches that they're batting like well under 200 with it. They batted 220 this year. Although he had almost a career high whiff rate on it, 50% of the splitters he thrown were whiffed. So he's at this point, I'm looking for saves, and I think Hector Neris can get me saves.
Zach Wheeler then immediately goes to you, who is one of my favorite pitchers, but I couldn't pass up the guys I passed up on. So Zach Wheeler, tell us about him a little bit.
You look at the Baseball Savant's player similarities, you see 2019 Cole, 2020 Walker Buehler, 2020 Brandon Woodruff. That's really good company. He still throws people forget how good of a prospect he was.
I don't.
He is really, really good. The issue that he's going to run into, and this was kind of shocking for me, is he did throw his four seam more going to the Phillies. But it actually got hit harder. His sinker was one of his better pitches, and people looked at his year and were like, wow, his strikeouts were really down. Like, I think his K per 9 was like just right above 7, but he had a great year. He had he had an ERA under 3. And he was going deep into games. I mean, he was consistently going 6-7 innings, and he pointed to that sinker usage, especially early in games when he was trying to, get outs. Which was always something he struggled with the Mets, was going deep in the games. And then you add in that he has 2+ breaking pitches, a slider and a curve. Both had whiff rates well over 38%. He's just a well-rounded pitcher. Add on, he gets JT Realmuto for the next 5 years. JT Realmuto, the fielder, not the hitter. I think the sky's the limit for him, and he's a dark horse Cy Young candidate.
All right, Lance Lynn going to the White Sox. I know a lot of people in the baseball group were kind of scratching their heads as to why the White Sox pulled the trigger and gave up on Dane Dunning, but I was ecstatic because we finally got a veteran pitcher on that rotation to get us a little bit further in the playoffs. Is that the same way you see it, Ricky, or how do you see it?
Yeah, the only thing I see about this, the one thing that, just speaking on the White Sox term, he was rumored to come at the trade deadline last year. We really needed that arm. I think the White Sox could have had a great run last year had they had pulled the trigger on that Lance Lynn deal in the trading deadline. They waited till after the year. I'm ecstatic about it. He's a big guy, innings eater. He's going to show it to you. He's going to say, here it is, hit it if you can. He's not afraid to challenge batters. That could be a bad thing, but also could be a good thing. Hopefully the defense steps up and the White Sox can get better. They need more depth in pitching, but this is a good step in the right direction.
Yeah, they definitely need more because right now I believe it's still Dylan Cease, and now Carlos Rodon. I mean, he's back with the team, so
yeah.
He's the number 5 starter. So I mean,
he's the number 5 starter.
As
So
far as
live
number
with it.
5, as far as number 5 starters go, I mean, you can do a lot worse than the Carlos Rodon, and unfortunately, you still have Dylan Cease. You're still trying to develop him as well. So this is why the Twins and a lot of projections are still ranked ahead of the White Sox, which, Sean, I think we're due for another prediction for the month of February. So my January prediction of the White Sox making the World Series does not look so good right about now, and I don't feel as confident as I did. Actually, I don't feel very confident whatsoever about the White Sox and the Mets meeting the World Series in 21 after all this stuff that has happened in the last 30 days or so. But we'll get to that.
What was it? The reports on Dylan Cease coming out of spring training so far are really, really good. And we all know he has great stuff.
Yeah,
so I think he's going to be the number 5 personally over Rodon. But he's a guy to target that I don't think was picked here. And that was kind of shocking to me. Maybe I should have picked him over Dunning. I don't know.
No, I have a bad taste in my mouth about Dylan Cease, so I avoided him. I went with Luis Severino instead, the guy with the Tommy John surgery. So as you'll see, Sean, I picked Noah Syndergaard last week, and this week I have no hesitation about picking Luis Severino this week, as I'm excited to see if he can come back and bounce back. As Henry likes to point out every single time, Luis Severino and Noah Syndergaard are pretty much the same pitchers coming out, both playing in New York. So yeah, I'm going full upside as I see here, Sean. The just like all the other, it seems to be a running theme for this week. The depth really falls off after the top guys are taken, even at pitchers. So
I think this was the worst week for it in terms of like the lows.
Yeah, I thought that first episode was bad, but I guess this is even worse. So I might as well just roll the dice with a guy like Severino, who has top 15 starting pitching potential. Moving on to Freddie Peralta, another favorite of ours. I know Sean used to talk about him all the time, and he's still projected to be the long reliever for the Milwaukee Brewers. So that means cheap wins, some cheap holds, and a whole hell of a lot of strikeouts from your relief pitcher if you play in those leagues where you have to start a relief pitcher. So I'm excited for them, hoping for more of the same. Like I said, the Brewers I love their bullpen. It looks a little bit different this year. I'll have to check to see if it's still it projects as well as last year's team. But man, if
their middle relief looks a little shaky, but the top end of it's like probably one of the best in baseball.
Yeah, so, and Freddie Peralta is a part of all that. We moved to Ricky's pick of Stefan Crichton. Is that how you say his name?
Yes.
Crichton.
Yeah. Sean or Crichton, something like that.
Crichton, yep.
Well, this guy's supposed to always be saving for or closing games for the Diamondbacks, and for some reason he doesn't get rewarded for that position. Do you see him getting that role this year, Ricky?
Well, I don't know if he'll get the road. I think they ended up signing Soria. Is that correct?
Yeah, they just signed Joaquin Soria.
Yeah. So, I mean, he's going to battle for that spot. He's going to – if you're playing in a league that has holds, he may be your hold guy. This guy has a rate of 83% left on base percentage for runners. So, even if he inherits those runners, they're staying on base. So, he's not letting those runs come across. So, he may be a solid pick down in the end of the draft there. You're using relief pitchers in your fantasy.
He's a guy that in my 30-team dynasty in the last couple of weeks of the season, I picked him up. He was on waivers. He in a league with over 1,200 people rostered. He was not rostered. I picked him up. He ended up getting like 5 or 6 saves down the stretch, became their, de facto closer. And then when they signed Soria, everyone assumed that, Crichton was going to lose his closer's role. GM Mike Hazel came out and said that it is still very much a competition and that both of those guys could receive save opportunities. And one thing that's really interesting about Stefan Crichton, he's a 2-pitch pitcher, sinker, curveball. His curveball is actually insanely good, more so than you would think. But we haven't talked about it yet on the show, but Baseball Savant introduced the spin direction part, and his sinker and curve are 100% true mirrors of each other. Meaning that when they come out of his hand, one spinning exactly one way and the other spinning exactly the opposite, which is very, deceptive to hitters. And although he doesn't throw that hard, you look at his Baseball Savant sliders and you're like, okay, he's okay. His exit velocity's meh, but he's 99th percentile in barrel rate allowed. So these hitters, they can't get good wood on the ball. And I think that's a skill that he has. And he's still a young pitcher. You know, he's relatively new, but I like him as a sneaky candidate for saves.
Yeah, it seems like I said, he's always getting the closer's role, but he never does. But you guys will see that he got picked ahead of Archie Bradley in this exercise, so that should tell you all you need to know about the whole situation.
Well, Archie Bradley's going to the Phillies, and the Phillies are coming off being one of the worst bullpens in baseball history.
Well, that's what I mean. And Archie Bradley's supposed to be the closer down there, but we'll get to him in a little bit. Demarcus Evans, who's with the Rangers, you mentioned him. You kind of alluded to him earlier in this podcast there, Sean. Tell us something about Demarcus Evans that we obviously nobody should know who Demarcus Evans is. He's a very relatively new player.
Contraire. So with Demarcus Evans, Ricky picked Jonathan Hernandez. I think Jonathan Hernandez best serves this team and himself being that fireman role, much like Seth Lugo, Andrew Miller, guys that can go a couple more 3+ outs and you fit him into wherever you need him in the game instead of just a dedicated closer's role. Demarcus Evans, if you remember about this time last year, I was screaming the praises of a guy with a very high minor league walk rate named James Karinchak. Demarcus Evans is the next James Karinchak. If you look at their strikeout numbers, both posted Ks per nine well over 16 at multiple levels, ranging anywhere from 13.5 to 15.5, all the way to 16.5. The issue with Demarcus Evans, much like James Karinchak, was he has no clue where the ball's going. He posted minor league walk rates as high as 7.5 in almost 30 innings in 2017. He got that down in 2018 to 4.5. And then in 19, between high A and double A, he was 6.8, 5.2. But he still posted 0.81, 0.96 ERAs in those two stops. So he's a guy who doesn't really know where the ball is going. He did give up a lot of hard contact in his debut season. He only pitched 4 innings in 2020.
Right.
But if you see somebody with a 70 grade fastball, even though it only averages about 93, 94, it has really good life up in the zone. He's right over the top, so a good curveball too. I think he is the guy. I was the same way about James Karinchak. Keep an eye on this guy. He could blow up. And, Karinchak went on to become one of the best relievers in the AL. What do I know?
And then here's a guy with a little bit more known pedigree, and Jameson Taillon. He's went out with the Yankees. You pick him up on your team. I guess you believe that now that he's not with the Pirates, he should just be in a better place. Is that correct, Sean?
Yeah, and he was already starting to throw that slider and really kind of ditch the sinker, starting to throw it less. Of course, going to the AL East with a really rusty arm, hasn't pitched in almost 2 years, isn't always a good thing, but he is 29. He's going to pitch for a winning team. The ERA will probably go up. The home runs per 9 will probably go up. He's probably going to be, I'd say, like a 3.8, 3.9 ERA, but I could still see him winning 10 to 12 games. And of course, wins don't matter all that much, but they do in fantasy. And I still think his Ks per 9 have not, because you look at his strikeout per 9 numbers over his career, and they're like right under 1 per inning. I don't think we've seen his ceiling yet. He has great command, great breaking slider. I still think there's another level that he can go to. And I think the Yankees can unlock that because they're really starting to dig into the analytics side of pitching. Making the rounds on Twitter this week was their closed-in bullpen that they have down at their spring training facility, where it's kind of top secret classified. It's like basically a metal barn, and that's where they're throwing their bullpens, where they have all the Edgertronic Rapsodo machines, and they're calling it the gas station.
Oh, jeez.
It's a little cringy, but
Get it? Because high speed. Okay, whatever.
Thank you, Felipe.
Corey Kluber going to Ricky's team, the former Cy Young winner, the former best pitcher in all of baseball at one point of his life. Is now going to the Yankees. Ricky, you concerned about him having to pitch in a hitter's paradise in New York over there, or do you think he'll flourish?
I don't know if he's going to flourish this year, to be honest with you. I mean, this is going to be that evaluation year again. There's a lot of questions that need to be answered about Corey Kluber, but he is a 2-time Cy Young Award winner. The guy was dominant when he was at the top of his game. And so you just like to have somebody on your lineup that name just sounds good in your lineup,
Yeah, especially in this exercise where he's buried deeper in your rotation as opposed to being at the top of the rotation. So
Correct.
no harm, no foul if he's at the bottom of your pitching list there. I went with Michael Kopech just because, like I mentioned, we're running out of pitchers. We're running out of starting pitchers that I am intrigued by. I was close to getting Dallas Keuchel, but I decided, you know what? I guess I was inspired because I heard a story about Michael Kopech hitting 102, I think, in the radar gun. So I'm like, all right, well, I guess he should be fresh from last year. He already got his Tommy John surgery. I don't know when he'll pitch this year, but eventually he will pitch this year because that's just the way it goes in baseball. You know, when you have a hot shot fireballer like Michael Kopech, you have to, and you're in contention as well, you have to bring him up, whether at the very least to come out of your bullpen, even though that's not what he's built for, but whatever. It's a win now mode for the White Sox. And then I went ahead and picked Chad Green, who's another personal favorite of mine. The guy has a rubber arm. He kind of plays that Freddie Peralta role. Can step in and just put out any fires. He's been one of the more consistent, more underrated relief pitchers. And with no more Adam Ottavino there to hog up all the holds, I believe, I think Chad Green it's his time to get all the holds that he will not have to share with those other Yankee relievers anymore. So I like his 21 in those deep leagues that utilize relief pitchers in that regard. And then we get to Archie Bradley, who we kind of mentioned earlier on. Archie Bradley is kind of a sore spot for me and for Sean, I guess. But Ricky, you have, I guess you have some high hopes for Archie Bradley coming into the season?
You know what? I'm going to be honest with you. It's not so much that I had high hopes, but I hope you guys noticed something about Sean's lineup. Sean had picked all the Aarons, and I was going to go with Aaron Bummer, who's a setup guy for the White Sox. I've had enough White Sox, and I said, this going to be a setup pick. I'm going to pick up Bradley, and I'm going to just set the table for Sean to go ahead and pick another Aaron, and he took the
I've been
bait.
trapped.
So, you know,
I was schemed.
Is this Ricky Velazquez or is this Phil Hellmuth over here? Setting up traps like a poker table. But all right, but is there any I don't know.
I mean, Bradley's he's a good pickup for Philadelphia. I mean, he's a good reliever guy. I mean, I'm surprised he was still there. You guys let him fall to me. I took him, and I wouldn't mind having him get some saves opportunity with the Phillies, and let's see what happens.
Yeah, I don't like him at all.
I'm confused by Archie Bradley.
Sour taste in my mouth.
So one, he's 28. I would have thought he was like 36.
It's the beard, man. It ages you.
And then in 17 and 18, it seemed like for the last 2 years, really the second half of 18 and all of 2019, Arizona wanted nothing more than to make Archie Bradley the closer. They wanted him to just take it, run with it, so they could probably flip him and try and market him as this elite relief pitcher closer, and it just never happened. But in 2017 and 2018, he combined for 59 holds. That has to be probably the major league lead over that time period. He had 18 saves and 7 holds in 2019, 6 saves and 2 holds in 2020. I'm not sure how he's going to do as a dedicated closer. He confuses me. He's good and then he's not good. He has great stuff and then it's gone. He gives up home runs and then he has high ground ball rates. He's a contradiction in every sense of the word.
Oh boy, I'm looking up that the 2017-2018 holds really quick as you got me interested.
I've piqued your interest.
Yeah, but Archie Bradley does lead the league in holds from 2017 to 2018 only, followed by guys like Adam Ottavino, like I mentioned. It just means Chad Green time then, if that's the case, in New York. Tommy Hunter, Carl Edwards Jr., Taylor Rogers. So the who's who of pretty damn good relief pitchers who are not trusted enough, but just like these teams would prefer, like Archie Bradley, as much as the Diamondbacks saw him as a closer, he was more valuable as a 7th, 8th inning.
Yeah, and that's how they used him.
And that's why you guys can't pick with emotion. You have to look at the stats sometimes.
well, speaking of guys who teams would prefer to be at that 7th and 8th inning guy, Aaron Bummer. What a bummer for you, but no, I don't think he's ever gonna be chipping in and helping out with saves because his arm is too valuable for those 7th and 8th inning appearances.
Hey, Liam Hendricks is just throwing one slider too hard away. from Aaron Bummer getting saves. I don't want to speak injury into existence, but that was the whole reason of this Aaron Bummer pick. Of course, he was one of the most interesting 20. Yeah, I mean for Holtz too, but 2019 he was one of the sneakiest relievers in baseball, and then in 2020 he got hurt right at the beginning of the year. He had an exit velocity against, which is kind of funny, over 94 miles an hour, and you're like, wow, that's really not good. And then you realize that his average launch angle against was almost not -9 degrees. Last year it was -2.5. So these guys just hit him right into the ground. He didn't allow an extra base hit in all of 2020. He gave up 5 hits, all of them singles, 1 earned run, 14 strikeouts, 5 walks. I think he's a really, really good relief pitcher. And like I said, he's just 1 slider too slidey from getting saves.
He had 27 holds in 2019, so that bodes well for him. We finally move on to the last round here. Dane Dunning, former White Sox player, just the guy who used to just make me angry every time I saw him with the White Sox. I'm actually glad that we got rid of him and got Lance Lynn. But with the Rangers, he doesn't look so bad all of a sudden. He like, again, it's 2 a.m. It's time to go pick up that girl at the bar who's been sitting by herself this whole night. Let's go after Dane Dunning.
Dame.
Dame Dunning. What do you have to say about Dane Dunning there?
I saw this. I wish I could credit it. I can't remember exactly where I saw it on Twitter, but somebody pointed out, and it made me go look, that among, Dane Dunning is one of those complete pitchers as a full repertoire, sinker, slider, 4-seam change, curve. But none of his pitchers, he had a 223 WOBA against on his slider, 239 on his 233. Oh my God. 223 sinker, 239 slider, 296 changeup, and 0-0-0 on his curveball, which he threw only 7% of the time, which are all really good. I mean, that's elite levels. But then you look at his 4-seam, which he threw 21% of the time. It had a 439 WOBA against. So is he one of those pitchers who is better off just completely ditching his 4-seamer and throwing the sinker more? Because the sinker, they batted 173 against. I mean, he didn't give up any extra base hits on it. He's one of those interesting case studies. He's 6'4", so maybe he does get really good downhill kind of sink on a sinker, and maybe the 4-seam is just not going to work for him. So he's interesting. He's going to get innings after they traded Lance Lynn for him. He's 26. I like the upside.
And then Dallas Keuchel, again, I was keeping my eye on him, but at the end I couldn't pull the trigger on him. But yet another veteran pitcher that goes to Ricky's team. Give us something about Dallas Keuchel here, Rick.
He better step it up in the postseason if we get there this year, because he was the biggest disappointment we had in the postseason this year. Dallas Keuchel, I mean, listen, this kid, he's not a kid anymore, but this guy can throw. 24. He could throw. He's not going to overpower you, but he just has that. He could just locate. He has that ability to put the ball right in the right spot. Throw a lot of ground balls and stuff like that. I had to pick somebody. I was really looking forward to picking up Dunning myself, but Sean beat me to the punch, so I had looking, and I was like, I'll just go with Keuchel. Nobody's picked him up yet, so it's kind of like that last pick.
Yeah,
is Dallas Keuchel just like the non-Hall of Fame version of Tom Glavine?
No, Dallas Keuchel is left-handed version of Dan Herron.
Except, I mean, Herron was kind of good for a little bit. I feel like Keuchel's had a little bit more longevity.
Well, they both throw 88, right? That's him, right?
Glavine didn't throw hard. At least, Keuchel had a great changeup like Glavine did. That's where I was kind of going with it.
No, I don't like that. I don't like that at all. But I'll take a look at that. But yeah, like I said, I was targeting him. Then I couldn't do it because I at this point I'm just gonna go for the upside guys, and Davey Garcia is one of those guys that falls into that category as he becomes the Mr. Irrelevant of our exercise today. Davey Garcia, I've had my eye on him for like the last 2 or 3 years now. He finally got called up, and I snatched him up immediately, and he paid dividends for me in my points league. As he can pitch 5 innings, get the cheap wins because he's going to get a lot of run support. He just has to show up and not implode, I guess. but I'm excited for him. I really like him a lot. He's supposed to be a 50 future value pick here for according to Fangraphs. Was able to keep the walks in control in his debut last year. Strikeouts are a little low compared to everybody else, but that's fine. He's only 21 years, 20. Well, he'll be 22 in May. So just young, raw potential there. And let's see, how's that fastball looking? Okay, so the velocity's not there, but obviously this is more of a location.
It's more of a deception and up in the zone and
Exactly.
Good ride on it. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's a little bit on the slender side. He's a little bit lanky.
He's tiny.
5'9". He's meat. He's I think that's why I like him so much, because he has the same height as I do. So I'm like, hey, if he could do it, anybody who's 5'9" can do it, right? So, but no, I'm excited. I know that he's been on top of the Yankees list for a long time, so that's always a good thing to go after those guys for if anything, just to get those cheap wins in New York. What you were saying, Sean? I'm sorry.
I did just want to mention this to you. It's kind of irrelevant to our exercise today, but on Fangraphs, the Yankees are actually projected to lead the league in starting pitcher WAR, obviously led by Garrett Cole and his 5.6. But tell me if Ricky, this is for you too. Do you take the over under? They currently have Kluber, Taillon, Jordan Montgomery, Davey Garcia, and Domingo Germán to combine for 617 innings. Corey Kluber's made 8 starts in the last 2 years. Jameson Taillon's made less than that. Montgomery is just meh. And Garcia is going to be on a pitch count or an innings count because of his limited, pro experience. And Domingo Germán hasn't thrown a pitch since, 2018, 2019? I think that's like the most aggressive projections I've ever seen for them to actually hit 617 innings.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to fill those innings in with other people. The Yankees are always going to be hurt,
I mean, we're going to see Julie Chassin and Clark Schmidt. I mean, I actually like Clark Schmidt more than I probably like Davey Garcia. But I think it's looking at the Yankees pitching projections, and, we have a lot of Yankees pitchers here. Luis Severino, by the way, is projected to throw 85 innings coming off Tommy John. But it blows my mind to see Kluber and Taillon combined for 280 innings. There's just no way of that, right?
Well, I mean, that goes on to our next topic of discussion, and then we'll finish with this one since we do have Ricky on board. In January, I was brash and put it out there that the White Sox should be a better team than the Yankees. A month later, the Yankees finally woke up and started stockpiling some more, and now I'm not sure. I'm a little bit hesitant to go with the White Sox all the way through, but I guess Ricky, do you believe that the 2021 White Sox will finally make it to the World Series this year, or will the Yankees just come out of nowhere, so to speak, and overtake them and be the AL representative? Or do you see anybody else in this American League representing the World Series and for the league?
Listen, I think going into the season, those have to be the two favorites going in. And I think some valid points. I mean, you've made it, and I think, you hear it a lot. Until the White Sox don't beat Minnesota per se, a lot of people are counting them out. You don't necessarily have to win the division, but even if I think they will win the division this year. People have won the World Series as a wild card. Yep. And I believe that the White Sox has what it takes, to get over the hump. And you never know, they could still make some acquisitions during the season, toward the trading deadline. The one thing that I have concerns about Chicago is their starting pitching. They need that in starting pitching. If they can get another arm or one of these guys step up, whether it's Kopech or Dylan Cease or even Rodon or hell, Lopez, gets out of his ass and does something. If something, can bode well for the White Sox, if they get some depth in pitching, they have a tremendous lineup. They have a tremendous bullpen. There's no reason why. That's why the games have to be played. But I can see them getting to a World Series. If not this year, definitely by next year.
Yeah, I was looking at their bottom 4. They're like kind of 6 through 9 of the pitching staff, and it's Carlos Rodon. I know that name. Jonathan Stever. I've heard of that name.
Upcoming kid.
Reynaldo awesome. Lopez. Meh. And then this guy, I swear to God, he's a generic name that was auto-generated by the computer, and he doesn't actually exist. Bernardo Flores Jr. I've never heard of him. Like that. So that speaks to they do need some depth, but they also have such established veterans up at the top, like Lynn and Keuchel, that I think and even Giolito now, that it kind of takes the burden off of those last couple of starters, whether it's Cease and Kopech or Rodon and Lopez. So that's why I love the Lynn trade for him. I thought that was a great move on their part.
A necessary move, of course, yeah. And then the last thing, since we talked about Dallas Keuchel, here are some similarity scores according to Baseball Reference. So basically, they, through the magic of number crunching and all that, they are able to figure out who some of these pitchers would be similar to in years past. So here's some names notable names, I should say. By the way, not a single Hall of Famer here. So yeah, that's why I don't like the Tom Glavine prediction or the comparison. Dallas Keuchel compares to guys like Clay Buchholz, Jose Quintana.
I see that.
Chad Billingsley, which I don't see that, and Brandon Webb. Just again.
Oh God, Brandon Webb, Jesus.
Yeah, what could have been?
So good. He was so good.
And then there's similar pitchers to the age of 32. So Dallas Keuchel compares to a guy like Bob Ojeda.
Okay.
Shane Reynolds, Jake Arrieta.
Oh God.
Jordan Zimmerman. I think that Jordan Zimmerman might be the best one, I think.
The $200 million bandit Jordan Zimmerman.
And was that Quintana the White Sox version of Quintana or the Cubs version of Quintana?
It's a combination of the
career.
Two.
Yeah.
Hey, people forget Jose Quintana was pretty damn good with the White Sox, and the White Sox fans forget about.
We haven't gotten to the Angels. They'll be on, I think, next week's show.
I think next week, if you want me to preview that, I can.
Yeah, go for it. Quintana's a guy I'm picking in some really deep drafts, and I'm excited about him.
He's still not signed, right?
No, he signed with the Angels.
With the Angels.
Yeah.
Oh, that's not bad. Well, okay. Well, so here's our lineup for next week. I still don't know who the guest is going to be. It's going to be a last minute thing, but probably going to be someone from the West Coast. So you got the Boston Red Sox, the Anaheim Angels of Los Angeles, California, Orange County, South Central California, Inland Empire, California. Orioles, the Baltimore Orioles are in there. St. Louis Cardinals, Oakland Athletics, and the LA Dodgers. So it's going to be heavy on the West Coast. And you do have some of the established East Coast teams like the Red Sox and Orioles and the Cardinals, who are supposed to be the class of the NL Central, but somehow a lot of the projections do not like the Cardinals going into 2021. So there's still a chance for this team right here, the Cubbies, in a supposed to be a down year, they might steal that NL Central division, which will piss a lot of Cubs fans off because I thought we were going to be in a fucking rebuild already. God damn it. And everybody wants to rebuild until it doesn't work out, right? So, but yeah, man, fun show, guys. Thank you so much, Ricky, for joining us. It's always nice to have a new a voice in here. The point of these was to try to bring in some of our members, some of our more established members, some of our more active members, and kind of reward them and give them a soapbox, so to speak. And you
Felipe and his soapboxes. He likes giving them out now too, almost as much as he likes standing on them.
Hey guys,
man.
I really appreciate the opportunity. This has been it's been fun working both offline and doing this show with you guys. I get to catch you guys and just to be part of it this week is a total honor, and I appreciate the love that you guys shot my way. Appreciate that.
No, man, both ways, man. It goes both ways. Greatly appreciated. And for Sean, I am Felipe. This has been the Total Bases podcast. Be sure to check out all our other podcasts. We have Donk City Monday night. So they have an episode. They have to have an episode this week because they didn't have one last week.
Yeah, they're on.
I don't know what's going on with the Audible. I think they're due for an episode this week. So everybody's coming back, right? I that's my guess at this point. The step back, you saw Leon and Jacob throughout the comments section. Leon cracking jokes about certain players. You can check out his humor at Wednesday nights at the basketball group Ball is Life. Thursday nights, the Work Shoot podcast. Wrestling is getting into high gear as WrestleMania season is upon us. So there's going to be a lot of pointing to signs as we get closer to WrestleMania. Look, it's a WrestleMania sign. Point at it. And then Sunday mornings, we start your life group podcast experience here at the Total Bases podcast. We're trying our best to weld both the real baseball and the fantasy baseball aspects into one big ginormous monster. Yeah. Sean, Ricky, I am Felipe. We will see you next week.
Bye, Mom.
Take it easy.